Hello, in this video I'm sketching the Biolite Lumen 750 headlamp. Instead of purchasing anything for Black Friday, I figured anything that I wanted to purchase I would draw instead and use that as a way to consider whether or not I actually wanted and or needed that product. The video is currently sped up at 300%, and I am using the number 1 marker here to lay down my underlay. We can see me drawing through and doing construction there, oversimplifying the form as I start with marker and then letting myself kind of figure it out in terms of how some of the areas connect together. That there was a little, like when I say connect together, right, some of this is a little vague when I look at it. So I let the marker lay down and then figure out how I'm going to work out the sketch after I have the marker there. Okay, so after putting that marker down, I didn't want to go and keep sketching here when I wasn't exactly sure, what this thing looked like. So now I'm going in there with pen. I'm using the rapidograph 0.5 meter there to fill it in. And normally I'd be using a felt tip pen, but I've been trying out these rapidographs lately to see how they work out as a possible alternative to not having to buy so many pens all the time. All right, back to the sketch itself, right? We see me as I go into pen, slowly adding more and more details in there, figuring out what I can kind of fake in there, figuring out when I might have sketched a line where I didn't want it, how I might be able to work with that and add just a bit more detail to the sketch here. Slowly learning things about like the buckle and how the strap sort of connects to it. I think so far I haven't been rotating the page that much, which is something I typically do because I want to be sure that the sketch is staying inside of the frame for the camera here. So by keeping it there in one place, I'm able to monitor that a little bit better. I'm not sure if it's because I'm not rotating the page or if it's because of using the rapidograph, but I feel like the lines that come out of here are just a little less smooth than they would be out of a felt tip pen. I'll have to go back and do a test later, but that is something I've been noticing. I think more likely it's because I'm moving just a little bit slower with that rapidograph, and it ends up letting the ink bleed a little bit, and it ends up letting my lines, when I'm sketching them, wobble a little bit. Again, so with marker, again, setting up some basic construction here. Right, if I mess up, there's always an opportunity to make another line there that adjusts for what it was off with my mistake. And then from here, right, going directly into the pen, getting a little more detail in here. The challenge, right, with this sketch versus the reference, right, is that reference is pretty dark. So there's some details that are hard to see in there. So I'm using what I know from prior sketches to kind of fill in some of that space of what might be going on in those dark areas. All right, so there's one place where I made an error of like kind of drawing over that line there, and I'm trying to make up for it by drawing some contours on the strap to define that form in there. Overall, staying fairly loose with the sketch here, so that I can, again, allow myself to have some mistakes and not worry too much about it. while we're at it. All of these reference images are coming from a review of the lantern online at trailandkale.com. No, sorry, trailandkale.com. So if I'm sketching a product, reviews are a great place to find multiple images because someone wants to make their page look good, so and they want to show people the product that they're sketching, so they typically have images of it from multiple angles that show off interesting features that someone who might purchase the item is most likely interested in. So adding these sketches in here was just a fun way to give some context to the headlamp. I would imagine most people are fairly familiar with headlamps, so if they saw the first sketches I did, they would understand what it was, but it doesn't hurt to have another image that is very definitive of what the product is and how it might be used. It gives us scale. It gives us, what is clearly the back and the front, which for some may not be obvious from those first few sketches. Again, oversimplifying the hand there. We can see me turning the ring finger and the middle finger into like one little block to oversimplify it. Even adjusting my ink, my pen ink right there by making the chin a little smaller because it looked like it got too big with the marker, right? We see me like taking a little break from sketching, writing the title earlier, writing the date right now, and then I'm going in here and adding some marker to give some contrast to what are my favorite sketches on the page. Right, I do bring up the reference, but most of the time I'm just thinking of the light coming from one direction. I jump straight into the number 5 marker here. Just go super high contrast, really fast. At least if this was a white object, 5 is what would be on the shadow side there, and then going white on sides that should be facing directly to the light. So I am using the reference as reference, but not as something I'm trying to copy exactly, because now is an opportunity to do some exaggeration of the forms. Oh, no, sorry, not exaggeration of the forms, but exaggeration of the lighting to direct you to certain parts of the form. So I'm trying to, direct your eye to the things that I think are most important on the page. I really like the way that light sort of was shining on the hand and creating that contrast right there. So I want to highlight that because it's unfortunate that we lose so much of the side of the face there. So now I'm going to go in there and fill in with marker, right? Even my marker strokes, right, for the hair, trying to make that kind of match up to the strokes of the hair, so that if we see any marker in there, it adds to the image instead of taking away from it. I'm using the brush tip on my number 3 right now because I want to go a little bit lighter, but my 3 is really, really dry and there's no refills right now. So trying to keep all that ink wet at the same time, realizing the face looked a little odd without the lips in there, so I decided to add that, but then want to draw a little bit more attention to lanterns, so a few more details there. Add some stubble, but abandon it because I realized that's going to focus my attention too much in one direction, one spot of the image. That's not the most important. Right, coming back to that second sketch I started because I really like it. So adding a little background there to draw a little more contrast to it, and some thicker outline. I'll go ahead and add some thicker outline to the sketch above it as well, and I think that will be it for this little sketch. Again, this is going to be about almost 11 minutes, sped up by about 300%, so it means this was about a 30-minute sketch to get to the page to where it is. Part of the way I was able to get that sketch down so fast, right, is by focusing on bigger shapes and forms at first, and not worrying too much about the details, but allowing the details to come through as I start to add more and more to each sketch. Again, it's the last thing I add, it's not the first thing I add, is the details. It also allows me to stay pretty loose, and by staying loose, it lets you go fairly fast relative to your own drawing speed at first, rather than tightening up too much when you first start off the sketch. And just laying out all the tools that I used.